This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Thursday, April 6th, 2023. I'm Alex Brown. The Indiana Railroad Company is currently adding a 6-acre container yard to its intermodal terminal in Indianapolis. CEO Dwayne Swindle said the yard will accommodate about 1,000 empty shipping containers that could provide a benefit for freight customers.
It really tightens up that supply chain ordering process when you think about, hey, do you have empty containers available for me to load? We always have those on hand versus waiting in like a reservation system, allowing them to have to wait on an empty container to come available. These are always available.
The project, set for completion next month, is part of a $6.5 million expansion of the terminal. Indianapolis-based Palmer Trucks will next week mark the grand opening of its first TRP parts store and commercial truck service shop in Fort Wayne and create 10 jobs. TRP of Fort Wayne will provide a full line of aftermarket parts for trucks, trailers, and buses, as well as truck diagnostics and repair. City officials in Whiting and Hammond say the EPA is taking steps to formally designate the former Federated Metals Corporation complex in Hammond a Superfund site. Testing conducted by the Indiana Department of Environmental Management has revealed the presence of high levels of lead and arsenic that has affected properties in both cities, including residential areas. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Get ready, Northwest Indiana. We're headed your way. IBJ Media, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation invite you to the inaugural Engage Northwest Indiana event, presented by CareSource, Indiana University, and Old National Bank. Tuesday, April 25th at Valparaiso University. We'll be diving into regional and statewide initiatives with a focus on talent, education, and issues shaping our economy. More at ibj.com/engage.
AgriNovus Indiana and Purdue University have released the results of a new study that examined the use of new technologies to help eliminate food insecurity. The nonprofit says factors contributing to food insecurity include poverty, unemployment, and transportation, among many others. The study coincides with the launch of AgriNovus's 2023 Hunger Tech Challenge, and Jason Lusk, head of agricultural economics at Purdue, said on the Ag Bioscience podcast that connectivity and tech innovation are key to addressing food insecurity.
There's not a single challenge that one has to solve to really address food security. But I do think about matching consumers with the foods they want to eat in an affordable way. I mean, that's really the crux of the issue. It's so great to have this Hunger Tech Challenge because, we need new ideas. I think talking to consumers that are food insecure, maybe do some deeper dives into data, like some of the ones we're creating, to help really understand the problems that folks that are food insecure are facing. I think that's probably where we'll find those solutions.
This year's challenge looks to discover a tech-enabled business solution that connects food insecure populations to for-profit and nonprofit food networks. The House Ways and Means Committee has unanimously approved a bill that supports plans for several projects in Lake County, including a new convention center. Our partners at the Times of Northwest Indiana report Senate Bill 434 calls for funding that would come from the new Gary Casino to be used for the project and matched locally. If the bill is approved, county officials would be required to make a decision on where the convention center would be located by late 2024. However, additional revisions of the bill could be made before it receives final approval. 2 Indianapolis powerhouses are joining forces to improve how doctors diagnose Alzheimer's disease. Roche Diagnostics and Eli Lilly and Company are working to create a routine blood test that could help spot the disease earlier. Roche Vice President of Medical and Scientific Affairs, Dr. Corinne Fons, said the test could narrow the gap for patients.
What excites me most about this collaboration is that we have 2 companies that have aligned vision, shared objective to support a better, timely diagnosis for patients and access to future therapies.
Roche said if the tool receives full FDA approval, it would determine whether patients should proceed to further evaluation and testing that may confirm a diagnosis. A bill designed to prevent the state's pension fund from working with asset managers that use environmental, social, and governmental, or ESG, considerations in their investment strategies was advanced by the Indiana Senate Pensions and Labor Committee on Wednesday.
As it was originally written, House Bill 1008, authored by Republican Representative Ethan Manning of Logansport, was projected to result in a $6.7 billion loss to the Indiana public retirement system over the next decade. That number was based on the assumption that financial institutions would not be able to work with INPRS due to its stance against ESG investing, according to State Treasurer Daniel Elliott. That prompted lawmakers to make significant changes to the bill, including exempting private market funds, which makes up about 15% of the state's total pension investments, from the legislation. The amended bill also excludes the State Police Pension Trust and the pension system's defined contribution plans. Manning says the revisions would reduce the fiscal impact to zero and clear up any confusion while keeping intact the original intent of the legislation. The legislation also imposes reporting requirements on INPRS, requiring the agency to provide an annual count of all proxy votes made by fiduciaries. Greg Ellis, Vice President of Energy and Environmental Policy for the Indiana Chamber, called the bill, quote, anti-free market, and feared the impact it might have on companies that consider expanding their operations in Indiana. ESG funds have exploded in popularity in recent years, partly in response to a desire from investors to put their money toward what are perceived as noble causes. The committee advanced the bill with all 3 Democrats on the committee voting against the measure. The legislation heads to the Senate floor. Wes Mills, Inside Indiana Business, Radio on Demand.
Angie's List founder Angie Hicks is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports, and entertainment, and beyond. Available now from your favorite podcast provider. I'm Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.